I too rise to thank the government for their response on this Lyme-like disease inquiry. It's not very often, I think, that you get two reports in a row in this place where you get Senator Siewert and myself in thunderous agreement and support of committee recommendations. But it is a pleasure to work, and it has been a pleasure to work on community affairs, where we do deal with so many heartbreaking and intractably sad issues, and it's wonderful to see that almost inevitably we come up with bipartisan reports. It gives me particular great delight to read the government's response to this report. I also participated in this inquiry before and after the last election, and it was an utterly devastating experience. Listening to the personal accounts of those people who are clearly desperately ill, their families, their carers, and those who had survived suicide attempts, and the families of those members who were successful in committing suicide, because the agony of two things: the agony of their illness itself, but also the agony and the trauma in being so sick but not having anybody believe that they were sick and treat them as psychiatric patients, or treat them in many other different ways, which not only forced them, very sick people and their carers, to go round to sometimes hundreds of doctors here and overseas to find a diagnosis and to find treatment. It was utterly heartbreaking, and I know myself, Senator Siewert and other senators on the committee, even though an election interrupted the course of this inquiry, that we got to the point where we made the report that we did. And as Senator Siewert said, it has been a very long and a very torturous process for those people who have made submissions and for those who followed the course of the inquiry so closely. And while it has taken a few months, quite a few months, for the government to formally respond, I am just so happy for the thousands of people who have debilitating illnesses, which may or may not be classical Lyme disease. But the fact that the Government of Australia, that the Minister for Health has said, "We have heard you and we believe you. We have heard you and we believe you." Those are four profoundly important words to these sufferers and to their families. And I think it's the first way in starting to change the way that these patients have been treated, not treated or maltreated by the medical profession in particular. It seemed to me that there was some form of Stockholm syndrome or hysteria with the medical practice, that if anybody had come and said, "Look, I got bitten by a tick," or "I may not have been bitten by a tick, but I've got a bullseye rash, or I've got these symptoms which may be this," that they were immediately treated by so many medical professionals as hysterical, as mad, and something requiring some form of psychiatric treatment. So the medical profession itself, I think, must, and with the leadership of the AMA, must take a fresh look at these patients. Undoubtedly, some of them, who have been overseas in particular, will have classic Lyme disease. As we heard in the evidence, there are many other forms of vector-borne diseases that it could be, but again, the research has not been done. We heard, because of the way that patients were treated, quite often they weren't treated for other diseases and illnesses that could have similar symptoms, and so people may have had MS or other diseases which the medical profession never truly looked into. So, as Senator Siewert has gone through what the government's position on this, I thank the Minister and his staff who have been so engaged in this and genuinely looking for a way forward, and to working and sometimes pushing their own department to get to this, to arrive at this position. But I would ask all who get involved in this round table now, early in the new year, to come to this with a fresh approach. Put aside labels, put aside prejudices, put aside assumptions about what this may or may not be. Go to that forum with the intent to have a look at the symptoms that these people present with, listen to their stories and start a fresh diagnosis. Sometimes it might be in the early months and years that more effective treatment can be provided to ease pain and to make the quality of life better. But there is no doubt that more research is required to actually identify what these illnesses are, what the pathogens are, what the bacteria or the viruses are, and then start finding effective treatments for these people. So in conclusion, Mr Acting Deputy President, I thank all of my colleagues and again Senator Siewert for her tenacity and her leadership of this committee and of this inquiry. It's one of those inquiries, and this report today and the government's reply to this report is something that I think all of us in this place can be very proud of. It will make a difference to many people's lives, to people who are not believed, who are not listened to, and who are quite simply desperate. So to all of you, I say this is the next step. And here in this place, we do believe you. We do want to find answers to your illnesses. And I just hope that the AMA and the medical profession more generally go in with a fresh set of eyes and ears and look after these patients, because we've put them through enough. Thank you.